r/AskReddit, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. What is a real-life example of this? The introduction of non-native species as a means of solving an environmental problem. Haiti did not have cholera. A disastrous earthquake hit Haiti in 2010. After the earthquake, humanitarian forces from the UN arrived to help, and the Nepalese contingent reintroduced cholera to Haiti. This epidemic has since infected approximately 850,000 people and killed over 10,000. The introduction of kudzu for erosion control. It has become invasive and girdles and kills plant life above ground without establishing proper roots, therefore causing soil erosion. My mom called my Christian university, that 17-year-old me attended by my parents' behest, to inform the school that I was smoking weed, drinking, and having sex. She thought because it was a Christian university, they would put me into a counseling program to get me back on track. The school told me to pack my bags, leave immediately, and they rescinded the 80% scholarship I obtained, causing me to owe the full 100% for that semester, which I'm still paying off a decade later. Edit. This comment is getting a lot of traction, so I figured I'd add another nugget. After getting kicked out of college, my 18th birthday was the next month. My parents somehow, my dad is a tech nerd so he could hack any account I had, found out that I was going to have a party at a friend's house to celebrate. There was alcohol and weed at the party. Lo and behold, my parents called the state police and alerted them of the party. I and 3 other friends got arrested that night. Most charges were dropped or expunged eventually. Edit 2. Thank you to everyone for your responses. There's too many comments and DMs to reply to, so I will answer some here. For those saying I got what I deserved or my mom was justified, it takes 2 to tango. My choices played a role for sure. This story was a response to the prompt about good intentions going sideways. My mom had good intentions when she alerted the school of my activity. She didn't want me to get kicked out and still be paying for it years later, but that's what happened. I don't claim sainthood in this scenario. I broke the rules knowingly. How did my mom know about the partying/sex? I visited home for a weekend and she went through my bags while I was in the shower. She found condoms and a bottle of liquor. She already knew I'd been smoking weed here and there for a couple years at this point. I said my dad hacked my online accounts to discover I was throwing a party. Excuse my lack of intelligent tech vocabulary there. He had a program or software where he could track keystrokes to then discover passwords to my accounts or something along those lines. Similar to what they used to monitor the computers in my high school. How is my relationship with my parents now? It's great. I have forgiven them completely. That doesn't mean I don't feel some resentment now and again. Their choices, and mine even more so, made my life very difficult. At my lowest point, I made a plan to kill myself. All of my dreams and potential seemed crippled by debt and a lack of gainful employment opportunities. I lived in a town, technically a village, of 300 people in rural Northeast, USA. Thankfully, before I was able to harm myself too badly or permanently, I had a mystical experience. During that experience, I saw my situation, my parents, myself, and reality from a perspective that was not my own regular waking consciousness. I saw that I could choose to perpetuate pain and suffering by holding on to anger, hate, and resentment for my parents and myself for the choices we made. I saw it was possible to feel joy, to forgive, to repair, to heal. My life didn't instantly become better the next day, but my perspective shifted to where I wanted to repair the damage that was done. Anger is the second wound your enemy inflicts upon you was very applicable in my situation. I could let the anger and hurt dictate what my life would look like, or I could choose to cultivate joy, come what may. Holding on to anger and resentment was another form of allowing my parents to control me. The real power move is to forgive. To release the hold your enemy, for lack of a better term, has over your life through your unhappiness. Behind true forgiveness is where we find freedom. Much love, Reddit. Most moral panics? Stranger danger, convincing people in the 1970s to 90s that hundreds of thousands of American children were being yoinked into random cars by evil strangers each year, while downplaying and underfunding the resources that could actually help decrease child abduction. Child abductions not only never came anywhere near those huge numbers, but it was and still is nearly always a custodial issue or a very close family member. Teaching people to be wary of kidnapping is great, directing all their fears toward vague spooky strangers and not helping people learn how to actually prevent kidnapping is kinda shit. George W. Bush admin created subsidies on corn to promote the production of ethanol to be used in fuel, etc. Better for the environment and so forth. Couple of downstream effects. 1. Ethanol in fuel lowers the fuel efficiency, so you have to buy gas more frequently, more of an inconvenience, but that's why fuel with no ethanol is usually slightly more expensive. 2. Corn sold for other purposes than ethanol didn't qualify for the subsidies, so there was a strong financial incentive to sell to ethanol producers instead of for food. This drove the price of food corn, and food that uses corn-derived ingredients, up, affecting poor people the most. 3. The financial incentives were so strong that farmers were buying up cheap land in areas that were very unsuitable for corn production or switching away from crops that would grow more easily if they couldn't afford more land. In western Kansas, corn needs to be heavily irrigated in order to grow. There is an enormous aquifer that stretches from South Dakota to the Texas Panhandle. Increased irrigation combined with a years-long drought drained the aquifer to the point that the city of Hays has to truck their water in. Edited to add line breaks. Edited again to say thank you for the awards and the likes, kind strangers. Those parents who solve all their kids' issues and don't make them stress about consequences of their own actions. Their kids just turn into inept and entitled adults who still act 15 for decades and not only have a harder life for themselves but make life miserable for everyone around them too. Edit. 1. Yes, it's bad to go too far the other way. Raising a child is a balancing act, I get that, but ignoring a child isn't usually from good intentions while spoiling them often is, and that was the prompt, smiley face. 2. If this sounds like it happened to you, I promise you that you can get yourself out of the cycle. It sucks and it hurts and it's unpleasant, but you can do it if you want to. Get ready to fail, and then keep trying anyway. Persistence will be a new skill, and you will be bad at it. And that's okay. You didn't do this to yourself, you don't need to feel shame. Digging yourself out, however, is something you'll be doing yourself, and you can take pride in every step you make it the right direction. No child left behind. A man named Dr. Spock wrote a handbook for child rearing. It was widely circulated and well received. Many of our parents likely got their child rearing advice from this book. In it he recognized that babies throw up a lot and therefore recommended newborns be laid on their stomachs to sleep. Unknowingly, this would result in the accidental smothering deaths of thousands of newborns. A huge number of SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, cases can be laid at his feet. To this day the Back to Sleep campaign is still fighting to update parents on what we now know: newborns should sleep on their backs until they can reliably roll over for themselves. Lobotomy. Surgery to fix the mentally unwell. It sounds so good, no more reliance on medication, you're good from now on. But it didn't work. The outcomes were awful and it was frequently done without any sort of consent. It all could have been shut down fairly quickly if people were honest about what was happening, but careers and money was at stake. So many unnecessarily suffered. The r/mi the asshole comments section. Trying to rescue too many cats. The D.A.R.E. program. Since the abysmal performance of American schools has been in the news recently, No Child Left Behind and its replacement Every Student Succeeds Act. America has never had really good public education, but it used to be serviceable. NCLB came in to try and create some milestones and accountability. Instead, it made the problem worse. ECSS came in and tried to address its problems, but changed the stuff that wasn't the problem and left the bad parts unscathed. Taken all together, 57% of high school graduates can't read at a 7th grade reading level, and over a quarter are functionally illiterate. Once upon a time, I found a wallet on the beach. Having lost my own more than once, and not having it returned to me, I am aware that it is a stressful life event. So, my first thought was how to return it quickly. Looking through the contents, the owner was from out of state and there was no contact information other than the driver's license. Aside from that, only a few credit cards and some cash. Not knowing how long ago the owner had left, I thought, let's just sit here for a while and maybe he will return looking for it, since it is the first thing I would do. After a couple hours of fun and sun, we needed to move on. My next best idea was to turn it into the local police station, which we found easily enough just down the street. What I thought would be a quick in and out turned into a full-on interrogation session, during which I was, at one point, accused of theft/robbery. It was a bizarre experience, to say the least, which wasted an hour of our day. Sheltering your kid from every possible problem. Bounties for killing invasive animals. You have a bunch of animals you don't want, so you pay people for each animal they kill, usually by getting them to produce the carcass or a unique body part. People then start breeding said animal, as it's easier and more lucrative than catching them in the wild. The authorities find out, and stop the bounty program. So the breeder let all their newly bred invasive animals into the wild. Situation is now worse than before. There's a famous example involving cobras in India, IIRC. They also tried this with rabbits in the area I used to live as a kid. In this case, no breeding was required, as the bounty drop-off point was the local police station. You'd go in with a bag of cute bunny tails. The officer on duty would count the tails, and pay you for each tail. He'd then take the bag of tails round the back of the station and pop them in the dumpster. At which point, a friend of the bounty hunter would dive into the dumpster, retrieve the tails, go into the police station by the front door, and repeat the cycle with the just retrieved set of tails. The invention of social media. When Tom was working at Friendster, I genuinely believe he wanted to build something that allowed people to socialize and communicate in a new and modern way. On paper, early MySpace is a brilliant concept that made a lot of people realize the potential of the internet. This concept was that mutilated and turned into what social media is today. Quite possibly the single most socially damaging invention that ever happened. Far away from bringing people closer together, it has turned into a tool that is tearing people further apart, making them feel more disconnected with society than ever, and instead of democratizing discussion, it has put even more power into the hands of the elite. The beginning of any political journey, I suspect. Keeping on trying to help someone so desperately that you lose sight of your own actions and end up hurting everyone around you by neglecting your own health and becoming overly defensive of that person, even insulting and attacking others for them. This can happen too fast when you fall in love with a bad person. On a personal scale, trying to help a really drunk person. I'm a woman and talkative, and I started talking to another woman at a bar who was really drunk. She told me her friends deserted her, so I said she could hang out with me and my friends as it was my birthday, to keep an eye on her and because she seemed fun. Then she started falling off of chairs and spilling drinks, so I encouraged her to get a cab. She started crying how everyone hates her as I was helping her outside, but agreed to go home. I got a cab, paid for it because she was a mess, and all of a sudden she got really violent and ended up kicking me in the face trying to get out of the cab because she wasn't done. She pushed me and told me to fuck off, but ultimately sat back down in the cab crying. We had already exchanged numbers, so the next day she texted me apologizing profusely and asking if we could stay friends. I told her I appreciated her apology but no thanks. I will always try to help people where I can, but that turned me off from going above and beyond. Plus, you can rarely rationalize with really drunk and upset people. I'll poke a little at my fellow leftists here. Plastic bags. Back in the late 90s there was a huge push for people to stop using paper grocery bags because of the amount of trees being cut down for paper. Unfortunately, it turns out the logging industry can be pretty sustainable, though not entirely faultless. And plastic bags are unrecyclable and so thin that reuse is uncommon, instead contributing to massive amounts of plastic pollution in the environment. Another example is the protest against hunting white-tailed deer. Unfortunately, we killed their natural predators, and hunting is an effective way of keeping their population at sustainable levels. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you have enjoyed this video and subscribe to never miss an upload.